Hello, everybody. This is Big Feelings in AuDHD, the science and the solutions. I've decided to come on now because, yeah, I've got quite a big presentation here, right? And it's going to be incredibly helpful. And I figured if I do it at 7 o'clock at night tonight, like I'd agreed, it's actually going to be far less interesting to people, and you'll probably fall asleep in front of me. I have made it very colorful and very interesting, right? So I'm hoping that that will be helpful for many of you. And there's a bunch of methodology in this and a bunch of information in this that's going to be some of it new, some of it not new, but there's an original sort of perception being presented that I think is going to be extra helpful for anyone who's watching, right? And it is working on I'm working on kind of getting out as much as I can over the next couple of weeks on odd big feelings and AuDHD. And there are three sessions. So the first one that we're looking at right now that you're engaged with is connection to self, right? So, and we're going to resolve the problem of connection being unsafe for AuDHD children and for neurodivergent children generally, but this is more AuDHD specific, right? And where that was learned and why that is the experience. And we go through three stages or phases of that reconnection. So it starts with connection to the self, to others, and then to the world, right? And this is connection to self. Now, I'm going to be sharing a slide or a bunch of slides rather. There's lots of them, right? And I've tried to make them as fun as possible. I really have. And they might not be, but I really am doing my very level best to ensure that. Now, in order for my own comfort, I do play music in my ear while I'm doing things. Now, it needs not to be disruptive stuff, so I'm just going to pick something really woodsy and blah. I love a bit of folk lately. A bit of a twangy guitar, right? Because I'm really well. That and Samantha Mumbai. Do you remember Samantha Mumbai? I've been listening to her flat out there today. So we're going to be looking at this workshop, and there's quite I call it a workshop because there's some thinking involved, but you don't have to do much else. And there'll be some things to kind of take down. So if you want to get a notebook, then by all means go for it, right? I'm gonna just pop up the right thing. That's definitely not the right thing. Right, hang on. We're nearly there. Nope, not that one. Right, so please excuse me and taking a second to find what it is I'm looking for because it all seems to have disappeared now. And I'm going to share. Why is that happening? That's fun for nobody, right? Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm really not tech savvy. I guess this isn't obvious. I'll get there someday. Right, so here is my presentation, Big Feelings and AuDHD, the science and the solutions. Now, I have been reading a lengthy diatribe by a very wordy man, I'm only joking, by Dr. Joseph Delaney. It's his thesis, and it does cover that reference. His thesis references a lot of the first section of this, but there's more sections than the ones that are listed here. So just to give you a general idea, so this is a live talk presenting the doctrine of autonomic space and how we look at a problem changes the outcome. So when we reference AuDHD children, very often we are referencing the end point experience of AuDHD. It's the result of multiple disruptions that causes dysregulation, extreme meltdowns, extreme reactivity, and all the rest of it. And what we're doing is we're turning this the right side up and looking at the whole spectrum child from the front end, where this begins, where all of these problems begin, and how we can flesh out from a preventative perspective, first of all, the entire process of not avoiding feeling, quite the opposite, but healthy feeling. When a child reaches dysregulation, that point of dysregulation where it is extreme, it's because of having come out of the body too often and of exiled emotion that is locked in the body and all this other sort of stuff. And we're going right back to the beginning to avoid all that. And then also showing the different stages of reconnection to self. So if we do meet a child who is in that state, we have the methods or tools to start gently bringing them down off it. You'll also know in depth, because I cannot do succinct anything, right? How to change that for them or to make different, okay? Now I'm going to just double check and see if anyone is watching me on the internet. I don't know whether anybody is, right? But I'm just going to very quickly check. Nope, nobody is. That's fine. So I'm just going to take you through some of the topics for today. So things to know about the nervous system, which is going to be really important to everyone. The body-mind connection and AuDHD. The AuDHD child and emotions, exiled emotions, what they are, where they come from, what is co-regulation, the connection to self-loop method, which is one I've made up, but I am giving to the world here, meaning, place, and space language, and intuitive responses, right? So this is the first session of 3. So if you're here, then there's lots still to cover later on, right? So things to know about the nervous system. There's a lot, right? So Dr. Robert Porges proposed in polyvagal theory that the autonomic nervous system has 2 settings. So it's parasympathetic to sympathetic in a split sense. Now, what that means is we all have a nervous system, right? And when we are dysregulated emotionally, there's one side, the sympathetic nervous system, where we are presenting in fight or flight behaviors, right? Where we're being aggressive or avoidant or dissociative or running away or just generally, it's expressed emotion on an external level observable in the sympathetic nervous system setting. Now, the other thing with polyvagal theory is that there's another side to the nervous system, which is the rest and digest phase. Now, that's the rested state. And we can also go into dorsal vagal phase state in that as well when we have just resigned to be in a state of um, adaptive stress response, where we are just slowly, quietly sort of dying inside, and we're in this false state of rest where our body is extremely exhausted from an awful lot of cortisol still running through it, and quietly running ourselves into disease and extended distress long term and burnout for AuDHD, right? So when we look at the human body or human experience in that split sense, it makes us look kind of bipolar. And if you can see me on the screen anywhere, it's like an up and down sort of a state. And we unfortunately, due to these observable experiences, tend to split our perception in two, where we're like rest and digest, i.e. not really moving much is good. And any sort of expression that is dysregulated is bad. That's not the case at all, right? This is my problem with polyvagal theory, right? So when we look at the human experience of emotion in this way, it suggests a lack of improvement, like it's just constant up and down of positive and negative feeling. But our multiplicity, our experience has multi dimensions when it comes to emotion. And there's a different theory to go on top of that called the doctrine of autonomic space. This is from G.G. Bernson in 1991, I think. I'm pretty sure that's right. If I'm wrong, Joe will definitely tell me, right? But it suggests the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system are independent of each other. Now, the parasympathetic in its healthy state is the one we want to mostly be in. But what real health is, right, and this was fascinating for me to discover, is ease of flicking between both. Mere seconds of difference, not just minutes, not hours, seconds. With neurodivergent children who are traumatized, which is all of them, right, there's a longer transition between those two states, it appears, right? And as a result, they're struggling more because the dysregulation seems more obvious. A healthy heart rate variability is dependent or is an indication of health in the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system. And it indicates that our emotions are being regulated with ease because we have that variability, that we're able to move between parasympathetic and sympathetic regularly within seconds. That's a strength of health and well-being inside of the body. Now, if as is suggested by the doctrine of autonomic space, right, the nervous system that is sympathetic, which is fight or flight, and the rest and digest one are working actually independent of each other. So they could be doing something over here, and then something over here, and then something over here, and something over here. And there could be a kind of a fluctuation constantly in progress. So it's neither bad nor good, whatever is going on externally or emotionally, because both of these are active, which is giving us this positive sort of impression that bringing them into regularity or into balance is possible. Whatever is presenting externally, they are working together in some way. And if they're in conflict or dysregulated in that time and they're doing two separate or opposite things, there are ways in which to bring them into balance. Okay. And there are multiple ways to do that. So Dr. Joe talks about this a lot in his thesis, which I reference later on. If you want to read it, it is on Google. They haven't got the name right to mind just this moment, but you can check later. And he's a neuroscientist who was overseeing Sincerity School and overseeing my life, right? So he is a really, really worthy and powerful individual. And that thesis would solve all the problems in the world if we all read it. And it is on Google, like just look him up. Dr. Joseph Delaney. It's in Liverpool Records now. Um, Okay, so emotions matter and being an active agent. Now, this is where I start to reference Dr. Joe a little more heavily over the next couple of slides, but I don't do that for the whole of this presentation, just at the moment. So public perception of emotional expression is currently in the negative, despite the fact that most all individuals today are in a state of numbed-dissociation, excuse me, I'm having a sip of tea, exhaustion or adaptation distress, and this is directly from his thesis. Adaptation distress means when a stressor externally is not removed, we start to adapt to it, but our health markers, our stress markers in the body are higher, like our heart rate's higher, cortisol in the body's flying around, adrenaline's flying around, and that's extremely bad for our health long term and will turn into a disease eventually. But we believe adaptation to stress is a normal part of life. And it's not really because of the world that we live in. We sort of accept ill health in our nervous system, in our bodies, in our well-being. And it presents in multiple different ways, like just exhaustion, tiredness, fatigue, numbness, boredom, irregularity in our empathy, irregularity in our communication, this constant sense of depletion. They're not normal states. We don't have to stay there. And the thesis is really amazing at describing that, so you can go to that later if you want to. But encouraging, supporting, making space for, and demonstrating for young people that emotions are healthy, natural, and part of the multiplicity of human experience is essential to a healthy and regulated body. A really unhealthy body doesn't look like it's feeling anything, right? And this is where our perception is really backwards. Neurodivergent children kind of are honest, right? They're honest and healthy in their responses to the world we live in. And our perception of them has been in the negative because of our negative perception of emotion and the expression of it. They're kind of really good tells for when something isn't right. And their health depends on us being able to see things that way. And that's what this workshop is going to look at. Okay. So I direct you to Joe directly. He says, multiplicity of human experiences dependent on emotions and the allowing of emotions to be expressed. It's essential to a healthy and regulated body and to the development of high heart rate variability, right? The autonomic nervous system responds to stress which from Dr. Joseph Delaney, neuroscientist and SEND education consultant, is a process and not an experience. So stress itself is a process and not just a direct, simple experience. It's not a stimulus either. It's a process in which the individual is an active agent who can influence the impact of a stressor through behavioral, cognitive, and emotional strategies. And the way it was described in his thesis, if you want to look this up, is that stress can accumulate from an event, an environment, and internally from within our own selves. Because we're dealing with connection to self today, it's the internal neurodivergent AuDHD child experience we're going to be dealing with today. The internal stress that they may have, which is impacting how they behave and how they react to the environment around them, and using that to inform our strategies. Okay, so the doctrine of autonomic space allows for multiple states of nervous system shifting to happen at once. And as active agents in the process of stress, can bring both sets of nervous system response into balance. We can bring the whole of our body into balance because we are active agents in it. And that's a really healthy way to look at it. I love that. Thank you, Dr. Joe. Now, so the vagus nerve is something I want to talk about. Okay, so there's a little image of it. See the way it's connected down into the heart, right? The vagus nerve is the nerve that comes from the brain and controls the parasympathetic nervous system, which controls our relaxation response. Now, you're going to be like, I've heard all this before, but please stick with me because I've made this extra interesting and the imagery is really funny and I'm hilarious, so please don't leave. So there is more coming than just this. So the vagus nerve is known as the nerve of compassion. I love all this information. It's so fascinating to me. When the vagus nerve is activated, it immediately begins the process of stabilizing the autonomic nervous system, flooding the body with a feeling of awe or love. And the autonomic nervous system directly affects lots of other systems in the body. It's how we process emotion, but it also affects lots of other systems. So that's why the vagus nerve and our activation or stabilizing of it is incredibly important to our own health, right? So we can stabilize or activate the vagus nerve through slowing the heart down and through the breath. The more our heart rate variability increases, which is a sign of well-being and health, the better we cooperate and communicate with others. People with high vagus nerve activation in a resting state are prone to feeling emotions of compassion, altruistic behavior, gratitude, love, and happiness. This is paraphrased from Dr. Joseph Delaney's thesis again. You can see that. I forgot to put it at the end of the presentation. I've put the title on the left-hand side there. The effects of stress and relaxation on heart rate variability and health and disease. Basically, it solves the entire world. Please read it. So to simplify, safe connection with ourselves and or others will immediately impact the stress responses in the body, shifting the entire nervous system into a healthier state in the long term. With repetition, relaxation of the body will vastly improve health, well-being, behavior, and expression in the long term. It is a natural means to reverse the impact and therefore immediate response to stress permanently. Permanently. It can establish high activity in the vagus nerve in a resting state in the long term. I can vouch for this, right? So Dr. Joe and focusing on feelings first. I can't do this presentation without talking about him for the first half at least a lot, right? So when attention is drawn away from the environment and onto our immediate inner emotional world, we can begin to relax and activate the vagus nerve. For neurodivergent children, this is extremely challenging, and today I'll explain how we get to connection to self as the first stage of healing and improvement of the AuDHD experience, which is rooted in Dr. Joseph Delaney's simple step of focusing on feelings first. Because it is only in a relaxed state that we can release emotional energy, muscle tension, and strain, i.e., stressors, from our internal experience. Very important thing I just said. Now. Oh, the body-mind connection. I missed me mountains there, right? So, the emotional world of the AuDHD child. As already established, love the baby over here, look at her vibrant, she's so cute. Now, as already established, stress is a process of transactions between events, the environment, and the body. A child who is neurodivergent already experiences heightened transactions between body, event, and environment at all times. The current of feeling, which is a term I've made up, within them is strong. So there's constantly this flux of information and feeling moving through them at all times, and their behaviors are largely influenced by this current of feeling. Now, if they're to become active agents in their own balance and harmony inside and well-being and long-term health, this flux of feeling, the current of feeling moving within them, is something we can influence, and it is also something we need to be aware of when we support them. So as parents or carers or educators, as you're listening, this is relevant to you. When the current of feeling is positive, free, and autonomously influenced by the child and their own preferences and sense of play, they are in a heightened state of health and well-being. We can't always see that. It's invisible, but we might be intuitively able to observe that state of flowing well-being if we pay attention. Now look at her vibing over here, right? My state, my current of feeling, I have increasingly more positive experiences with that. Myself in a resting state or engaged with other things. I love how I feel internally now. I'm an AuDHD person. I've done an awful lot of breath work, touch therapy, nature therapy, music, art, and movement in order to get me to that state. And it came from really deep self-knowledge and recognition of that current of feeling. And also noticing that it's my natural state to be quite happy internally. Even when I'm not engaging with other people, my face looks a bit flat. My emotional world is very precious to me, and I believe that that's the case for all AuDHD children. Now, the conflict of connection. This is the thing I've made up. Unfortunately, this means that stress introduced to them without warning hits them harder because of this positive flowing feeling within. They're more likely to go into shock or react more deeply in the negative because of this heightened state. It contradicts the current of feeling within them, which when healthy is largely in the positive, if their experiences to date have been predominantly good and healthy. And we'll talk about that a bit later. Neurodivergent children who are in constant exposure to a stressor will go into a stage of resistance to quote Dr. Joe again, the body begins to recover from the initial alarm, and in order to cope, it adapts and habituates to the stressful situation. Physiological arousal declines somewhat, but remains higher than normal. Their resting state is now disturbed, and their health and well-being in the long term remains impaired. This is how disease forms. And so heart rate variability becomes more rigid, and the emotional responses in the child become more rigid and disconnected from their own authentic feelings. They become anxious, overthinking, and reactive. Their body is disconnected from the mind. So the body-mind connection is really important to what we're learning today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm trying not to put on my teacher's voice. I used to be a secondary school teacher, and you can hear it. Could you hear it? You feel patronized. I'm so sorry. Now, connection is the cure. The neurodivergent child is highly sensitive. This is extremely pleasant in the right environment. A neurodivergent influencer once stated, I love this by the way, it's like being on holiday in a new country every day of your life. Even the routines are new and the sensory experience is heightened all the time. That's exactly what it feels like to be me. Exactly. Even brushing my teeth. Every time I brush my teeth, it's not the same experience each time. Nothing is the same experience at any point. And this is such a beautiful reason why routines are hard to establish, why learning pathways are non-linear, right? Where you see this sort of instability. My son, when he's learning something, it looks like he's making no progress at all. And then suddenly he's just grabbed things. And I feel like it's from that state of newness because it stays longer. Um, a state of rest and exploration is extremely pleasant for the child if permitted in slow, steady, balanced environments, but we don't live in a world which respects this experience, unfortunately. Yet. Now, invisible elements of influence. Now, this is all me, right? So these are the 4 invisible elements of influence that, when observed about a neurodivergent or AuDHD child, we can't see these things, but they are influencing behavior, right? It's the internal experience here that we're talking about and the flux inside. The current of feeling, which is in flux, that's the sensory, emotional, just a general state of feeling themselves. So their own energy is sort of in flux all the time inside. Number 2, unprocessed emotion from earlier experiences. If it is in there, it is influencing everything else. 3, the breath and heart rate. And then 4, stress, either external or internal, right? So that's event, environment, and internal experience. Okay, so those are the 4 unseen things that before we go to judge the emotional behavior of an AuDHD child are directly influencing it. And that's what we're working with today. So this makes connection to self, connection to others, and connection to the world more difficult than most people. Consistent repetition of safety in those experiences will reprogram imbalanced responses. Neurodivergent children crave connection, and connection is the cure for all imbalance, but it's getting them there that is the biggest challenge and the hardest thing for us to get a grip on. So this is what I'm dealing with today, and I'm hoping will be useful to you going forward. Now, let's go to the next slide. I'll try not to do stupid voices. Right, nope, definitely doing a stupid voice. Now, so connection to myself is unsafe. The AuDHD child with their deep and invigorating emotional world thrives on connection to self, to others, and to the world. But they need it to be balanced, safe, and in manageable amounts. Imagine a glass that's empty. It's a child's energy. A neurotypical child has one experience and it fills their glass half full. An AuDHD child has the same experience and their glass is spilling over many times. So that's about their energy. They are overloaded. There's too much going on and their energy will deplete as a result. Now, dissociation and masking as false compensations for connection. Now, we spoke about this craving for connection, right? And this craving to feel beautiful things and more of the beautiful things inside of them because they have that capacity all the time, the little AuDHD children and myself, right? 2 things occur when overwhelm is regular and they have been regularly made feel like connection to themselves is unsafe. And well, 2 things occur and there are reasons for that I'll speak about in a second. So disconnection from the body happens as a resulting from the belief that connection to myself is unsafe. This is understandable. The child who deeply craves connection to themselves has been taught that their feelings are unsafe. Where did they learn that from? Us, the adults. What I mean by this is a child will develop a pattern of dissociation or escape from their feelings by distracting or zoning out. I'll give you an example. My son, when he feels or hears a criticism from me, or he experiences a memory that he doesn't want to experience, he immediately leaves his body and I can't hear him, or he can't hear me anymore, or he stops engaging with whatever he's doing. He'll start looking at something else that helps him numb out. And he's only 5 and he's doing that, right? They also might fight, act out, or shout as a distraction mechanism because they don't want to process whatever has come up for them, right? Now, if we teach a child through judgment, derision, punishment, and shaming of emotions, and we treat emotional release as misbehavior for AuDHD children, particularly from trusted adults, this will increase the instance of dissociation and zoning out and disconnection and grabbing for false compensations to avoid feeling their feelings, because feeling feelings is health. Long term, the impact of health on the autonomic nervous system and all the other systems that it affects. The vagus nerve activity is affected. The child's well-being, authentic expression in the long term is affected. They experience their emotions as their real self. That is their real self. And when we are not okay with their emotions, then they habitually learn, I am not okay. Children cannot separate from what they're taught about the world and their behavior and what it inherently says about themselves. So we punish them for something, or we make them feel shame about something they've done or something they've expressed. And what they hear is not that their behavior is wrong or that the emotions are wrong. They hear, I am wrong. So the reaction is intensified as a result. So let's talk about masking as well. Do you see the wee guy standing here and he's got adult clothes on? Bless him, right? This is kind of a lot of neurodivergent adults in the world today, where they have an outward expression of their adult nature and they're still grappling with their child self because their child self was shamed so many times out of feeling at depth, or all their attempts at compensating for connection because they couldn't feel it to themselves due to all of those invisible influences that I spoke about, feeling themselves was too overwhelming. All their compensations didn't work. So they started to make up a personality based on external parameters or external rules that they've learned. Like, here's one. Sensitive children crave connection, so they will do as shown to try and experience it. They look outwardly then and say, right, those people look like they are accepted. That person looks like they're accepted. They're doing A, B, or C, so I'm going to copy them. So faking a state of being okay becomes natural because their emotions are not okay and they've been taught that. Their emotions are also dangerous to feel because they're, overwhelmed that they may be experiencing. And it's essential to appear as if they are belonging and safe. So they start to fake it, thinking that that's going to make them feel connected again. And it doesn't, obviously, because it's not dealing with the internal experience. They've lost something essential when we teach them to misdirect away from feeling, and they look outwardly for what looks like connection and what looks like a state of home in the body again. Over time, this creates exhaustion, burnout, and an increased loss of self. Very big deal, that. So the masking and dissociation. If we identify masking and dissociation early on, it is preventative for AuDHD children. It is a preventative measure that stops deep extreme dysregulation and deep extreme malcontent and loss of self later on as well. These are the warning signs, and if we can learn to notice them and always draw the children back to the body and back to a feeding state, then we are then increasing their potential for a healthy future. So something safer, I'll talk about this in more detail later, but it's the first stage of recovering from emotional avoidance. Real feelings of connection are established easily in neurodivergent children through something safer than people, usually nature, music, movement, art, or touch-based therapy. It's not full connection to others or the world, but it is a first step towards health and well-being internally. So we start with connection to self as the beginning stage, and they start by connecting with other things other than people, because people are irregular and unpredictable, when their baseline belief system is connection is unsafe. Much of this repeated benefits every neurodivergent child. So nature, music, movement, art, or touch-based therapy, these are all forms of self-nurturing, and they work. Now, exiled emotions. There's Brighton Pier there, boys. You ever been? It's lovely. Now, there we go. It's where I live. Now, feel to heal. I love these stickers, by the way. I know my stickers are ridiculous, but they're making me happy as I do this. So, as established, a healthy child will be connected to their body and able to express emotions safely. This is established with trusted adults who mirror acceptance, comfort, and safety with big feelings. The child will repetitively improve the balance and health of the vagus nerve and autonomic nervous system function by not disconnecting from their body and feelings. They will access emotions safely and feel less stressed, stiff, rigid, and unhealthily overwhelmed over time. I have been teaching my son this since he was no size, where I tell him that emotions are big feelings, they have to come out, otherwise they stay in. So he puts his hand on his heart and he names an emotion, and I let him get all of that emotion up and out. And now he comes back and tells me when people don't give him space to have his big feelings, or people judge him when he has his big feelings, or and he's aware that this is something he needs for his own health, and he will communicate and advocate for himself now as a result, and it's lovely. So proud of him. Now, we're now going to talk about the survive thrive spiral, which is very interesting. And we'll talk about exiled emotion, which is sort of a product of long-term dissociation, masking, child shaming, and emotional avoidance. Okay. So Ruth Culver's theory on it from 2020 is here, and I've put the image there that is worth having a good look at later if you want to Google it. Overwhelming feelings unsupported by trusted adults, the environment, or adequate tools must be stored away. This creates a reservoir of banished young parts holding unprocessed anger, terror, grief, shame, and hopelessness. They sometimes form as physical symptoms across time. Protectors, either fight or freeze responses, form to avoid feeling these exiled emotions. So that's when there's a really big backup emotionally inside of the child. And they develop all these sort of behaviors that are fight behaviors or freeze behaviors and actually look like parts of their personality, but they're all defenses from the emotion that they're holding on the inside. So again, increased dysregulation in the AuDHD child can be improved and reversed when they are supported in accessing these exiled emotions, which may take extended amounts of time. Through our acceptance, patience, and assistance in doing so, this may take time depending on the child and the methods presented later. So I will be showing you some simple steps today. Now, connection as the cure. A dysregulated child with big feelings is struggling to connect to themselves. They are struggling because they learned connection is unsafe. When we co-regulate with a child, right, we'll talk about co-regulation in a second, by offering them our calm, our steadiness, our peace, and our acceptance of them, the exiled emotions start to release. Now, this may take time. Over time, they become more and more connected to their own bodies, hold less unprocessed emotion, and are able to access healthier, more authentic feelings of joy, happiness, love, and pleasure again. Now, something safer may present. Just to remind again, this is the first way to re-establish trust in the body again and relax the child so they can healthily process their feelings. They're grasping for something safer other than a person is very understandable, and that can be utilized before they start to connect to their own emotions. So if they can connect to plants, to nature, to all those sorts of other things, that's really good and okay. Music is really good. They have heightened responses to really beautiful stuff. So beauty of any form is great. So what is co-regulation? Just very quickly. 1 second. Referencing the body-mind connection where it's focusing on feelings first, redirecting back to the body will be different for every child. The multiplicity happening inside of a child is important to remember. So we have two states always going on. Both nervous systems are both flitting from within seconds if it's healthy, and then all the rest of it. So both nervous system states are active and they are requiring assistance to find balance again. Balance helps them process and aid them in the long-term health, and the solutions are multiple. Energy management is key. Now let's move me over here. I love that guy sliding off the tree. I just think it's really funny. Like, what? Anyway, fun fact. Nature time for AuDHD children helps replenish lost neurotransmitters in the brain, like dopamine. They are more prone to depletion of dopamine and other important ingredients for the brain. There's a study on this from a professor in America. I haven't put it in, but if you ask me, I will find out. Green time is proven to increase all lost neurotransmitters and improve learning and connection capacity as a result. That's just time out in nature. It's amazing. So connection to self, the loop method. Now this has various stages, so I want to talk you through it, okay? So we start by observing, and then I double observe, right? Because when we are dealing with a dysregulated AuDHD child, it can be very threatening to our nervous system, and we can be regulating ourselves through the breath, through the heart, thinking calm, soft, loving feelings and thoughts, right? Whilst we are processing or observing the child. So first we start with, how are they compensating for feeling? Are they dissociating? Are they fighting? Are they screaming? Are they shouting? Are they shutting down? What are they doing? And you can sort of intuitively tell. So 2, observe. What's there something safer? Can you tell? There may be tension, stemming, rigidity, or frozen state, and they're grabbing for things, or there's something they're leaning to, and it might be something compensatory that isn't going to give a productive result, like maybe a screen or a computer, or they're tapping at something really intensely. Whatever they're doing is an attempt to reconnect to themselves again, but the emotions happening in the body are in the way, right? So round 1 on the next phase, that should say 3 and not 4, sorry about that, right? So round 1, offer nature, art, music, or movement. We don't go to forcing them to do anything like connect with us yet, because it's about getting them to reconnect gently. Let your observation inform your choice. And then finally, use meaning, place, and space language and go back to step 1, right? Now we're going to talk about meaning, place, and space language in a second. But when you start to go through these observations and you're just observing and offering these something safers for the moment, once you can see that they're starting to settle down a little bit, or they're starting to process emotion due to now beginning to relax, and they might start to sob or whatever. Crying is health, right? When you see tears, that's healthy. When they start to talk or express, that's also healthy. Do you understand what I'm saying? So being calm around that is great. If you're on the second loop, demonstrate breathing through your heart and naming feelings, or gently speaking to them. And this is where we'll go to the language or the scripts next, right? So this is meaning, place, and space language. So you're on round 2 of the loop method. Tell them exactly who you are. So that's giving them meaning, what you wish for them, and what you'd like to do together. This is really important for AuDHD children. Let them know you're in no rush. Ask them gentle questions. What are you feeling in your body, and where, if you can tell me? It might distress them if you ask this question too early, which is why we use the loop method. Offer the why behind your words. There might be a feeling in there that wants to come out, for example, and you can tell them that there might be a feeling in there that wants to come out, okay? So place. Offer them choice over the place it comes out. Do you want to go here, or do you want to go somewhere else? That is if they've agreed to this process. You have to give them choice over it. So space. Do you want me to stay? I'll wait, and we don't have to talk if you don't want to. So you stay consistently calm and present. And then the stay. Subtly demonstrate slow breath with a hand on your heart. Be calm and patient. Slow everything down. And then go back to asking about their feelings, bringing them back to the breath. Can they identify any of them? You want to see them expressing. You want to see them either crying or talking things out. But they might not get there if we don't use our patience and our observation skills. Now, finally, for this session today, and there will be another one next week, intuitive responses are the best responses. AuDHD children are all unique, and we are all able to observe and ground with support. The uniqueness of the child can be observed in real time and inform how we support with co-regulation. And we move beyond that further for our next session on connection to others, which will be next week sometime, I'm not sure where. Now, if this was helpful to you, my name is Seanin Friel, and I am Company Director of Sincerity Schools CIC, and we are fundraising to open a specialised school, bringing a full spectrum, leading edge curriculum to AuDHD children only and teenagers. And we're looking to open the schools in Sussex in 2 branches, and then also a global movement where we'll create a homeschooling program around this, and also transfer the education model globally if we can. So it's a big, big project. If you would like to donate, We would really appreciate it if this has been beneficial. Please get in touch with me at seaninfriel@sincerityskool.com. It'll be on the top of this video somewhere, that information, if you would like to talk to me a little more about that. Thank you very much for being here, and I will see you again next week for the next session. Hit follow if you haven't already.